Lebanon's president has rejected an international investigation into the blast in the port of Beirut, saying it would delay justice. This Friday saw protests by Brazilian social movements against President Bolsonaro. An Air India Express plane crashed in the southern Indian state of Kerala on Friday, killing at least 16 and seriously injuring 46. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Lebanon, where President Michel Aoun rejected an international investigation into the blast in the port of Beirut this Friday, saying it would delay justice. The president said there were two possibilities behind this week's devastating explosion, either negligence or an external attack by a missile or bomb. Aoun said he had asked France to provide aerial images in order to see if there were any planes or missiles in the air at the time of the blast, which destroyed the city's port area and killed more than 150 people while injuring over 5,000. Authorities have said they believe the explosion happened when fire touched over 2,000 tons of ammonium nitrate, which had been stored at the port since 2013. The cause of the initial fire is not known. Aoun told journalists that he was informed of the ammonium nitrate last month and had immediately ordered something to be done about it, adding that previous Lebanese governments had also received warnings about the explosive material. World Health Organization officials announced the delivery of personal protective equipment to Lebanon this Friday. The move came after 17 containers filled with supplies and equipment for the COVID-19 response were destroyed in Tuesday's blast in the port of Beirut. The WHO Emergencies Director for the Eastern Mediterranean region noted that new supplies, including aprons, gloves, masks and ventilators, are expected to arrive over the next week. He also noted concerns about maintaining a focus on fighting the novel coronavirus in the aftermath of the blasts.
One of our big concerns is we had 17 containers full of supplies and equipment for the COVID outbreak response, mainly personal protective equipment, the PPE that you hear about. So we have to urgently replace that. We've got $1.7 million worth of PPE supplies that we're putting together in our regional warehouse right now, and we expect to have that on a plane hopefully within 48 hours. This massive extra burden of injured people, displaced people, means that resources are going to have to be focused on that response. And we worry that an already overburdened health system and Ministry of Health is going to be overstretched to meet the needs of both the COVID response and the emergency response.
Belgian Foreign Minister Philippe Goffin noted his country's delivery of emergency aid to Lebanon on Friday, following the blast in Beirut earlier this week.
This C-130 contains 10,000 emergency relief kits, which include medicines for the equivalent of 10,000 people for 3 months, sleeping bags, 4 water jerry cans, and so we are loading a total of 10 tons of material, which is 63 cubic meters of material, which is close to the maximum capacity of our C-130. Well, we are in a long-term process here, unfortunately, and so this coordination is essential. This aid will inevitably be long-term because what is being asked for today will still be asked for tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and in the coming months.
The president of Algeria announced this Friday that a humanitarian aid shipment would be sent to Lebanon. The shipment includes construction materials to assist in the reconstruction of Beirut. 4 aircraft were sent, one transporting medical, surgical and civil defense personnel to support the recovery efforts. A second plane was loaded with medical and pharmaceutical supplies. A third carried food, and a fourth, tents and blankets for those whose homes were destroyed. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune confirmed the aid shipment after a telephone conversation with his Lebanese counterpart on Wednesday. The statue of Christ the Redeemer in the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro was lit up with the Lebanese flag on Thursday night as a sign of solidarity. The statue, located in the Tijuca National Park, was lit up in tribute to the over 150 Lebanese who were killed and the more than 5,000 injured by the explosion in Beirut. Members of the Lebanese community in Brazil gathered under the monument alongside local religious leaders.
Almost half of the city was destroyed by that horrible accident, and we came here to support the Lebanese people, together with the Lebanese community here in Rio de Janeiro, and show that all Lebanese in Brazil, and mainly in Rio de Janeiro and all over the world, stand with Lebanon.
The Israeli army bombed different locations north of the Gaza Strip early this Friday. Israeli media claimed that the attack was targeted at facilities of the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas. The strikes were the second on the besieged Gaza Strip this week. On Monday, Israeli forces targeted different Hamas military posts in the central and southern parts of the Strip. The Israeli regime continues to attempt to justify its attacks, claiming they are in retaliation for strikes carried out against Israeli settlements by resistance groups in the south of the occupied Palestinian territories. And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. This Friday saw protests by Brazilian social movements calling for President Bolsonaro to resign. The Conlutas, Labour and People's Central and 10 other workers' unions mobilised in Sao Paulo as part of the activities in rejection of President Bolsonaro's mishandling of the coronavirus. Protesters are also holding Bolsonaro responsible for the ongoing economic crisis and high unemployment. They hope that the mobilisations can serve as a tool for popular pressure so that the Chamber of Deputies responds to the 46 petitions for Bolsonaro's impeachment.
The government has scorned the pandemic. Health measures have not been taken. Employment protection measures have not been taken either. And we are now reaching a death toll of 100,000. We came here to protest against the 100,000 deaths in Brazil due to the irresponsibility of the federal government. We understand that it is a government that, as it is Father's Day soon, the government said it was the father of the nation, but it is a stepfather of the worst kind of the Brazilian people. He works against Brazil. He works against the national industry. He works against our reserves. He works against our indigenous peoples. He works against the workers through these attacks that he has made since he took office.
And former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva demanded on Thursday that the head of the Chamber of Deputies open an impeachment process against far-right President Jair Bolsonaro. Lula posted on Twitter what he considers evidence for the impeachment, referring to revelations by a Brazilian magazine that during a meeting at the presidential palace, Bolsonaro told cabinet ministers that he would send troops to intervene in the federal Supreme Court in order to restore his authority. Lula stressed that this showed that the president thought he could do whatever he wanted. In Bolivia, the indefinite general strike organised by the Bolivian Workers' Centre and the Pact of Unity Alliance continues despite the threats of intervention made by the de facto government. Since last week, social and union organisations have been protesting in different regions of the country to continue exerting pressure on the Supreme Electoral Tribunal after it postponed the general elections until October. They're demanding that the vote be held on September 6 as previously agreed. The Bolivian Workers' Centre, the chief trade union federation of the country, has called to continue the peaceful demonstrations, stressing that the de facto regime is leading the country to an economic, health and social crisis. Meanwhile, spokespersons for different social organisations have announced the deployment of troops in some areas in an attempt to break up the protests. Mexican health authorities reported a surge in COVID-19 cases and deaths this Friday. Mexico has confirmed more than 460,000 coronavirus cases and over 50,000 fatalities. Under-Secretary of Health Hugo López-Gatell noted that over 6,500 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours, as well as the relaunching of an agriculture project between Venezuela and Cuba represents a challenge to the US blockade and defence of the two nations' sovereignty, according to the Venezuelan urban agriculture minister. After the signing of the joint project to help urban communities become food self-sufficient, Minister Gabriela Peña stressed the challenges to resume the initiative in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and Washington's escalation of attacks on both countries. The minister also recalled that now more than ever the pioneering ideas of Commanders Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez on the need to boost agricultural production to ensure local food supplies must be put into practice. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Infante, director of the Foundation for Training and Innovation to Support the Agrarian Revolution, Foundation noted that this project aims to develop a new culture of food production as local communities produce for themselves. Authorities in Belize announced the reimposition of COVID-19 restrictions on Thursday following a surge in new COVID-19 cases. Health authorities confirmed 28 new cases, of which 20 were locally transmitted on the island of San Pedro. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dean Barrow announced emergency measures, including a nationwide curfew and the closure of bars, discos and other nightlife facilities. He also called for strict use of face masks and a limit on social gatherings. Meanwhile, San Pedro Island has been put under total lockdown. The United States added 1.8 million jobs in July, representing a fall compared to the gains of May and June, and evidence that the coronavirus is still slowing economic recovery. The unemployment rate dropped from 11.1% in June to 10.2% in July, but the figure still exceeds the highest rate during the 2008 to 2009 Great Recession.
But so far this year, we're still running a deficit of more than 12 million jobs. That's the number we need to create or restore to get back to where we were before. We still have 16 million Americans who are unemployed, and that doesn't even capture the number who are working part-time, would like to have full-time work, or are expecting to get called back and are not even looking for work at this point. We see the number of jobs being restored coming in at a falling rate. I think that we can very much correlate that to the fact that we've not been winning the war against the COVID-19 virus. The outbreaks that we've seen over the last 5 or 6 weeks have had an economic cost to them.
US President Donald Trump has ordered a sweeping but vague ban on dealings with the Chinese owners of popular social media apps TikTok and WeChat on security grounds, sparking criticism.
If TikTok is banned in the US, so there's no more TikTok, these kinds of video sharing social media in the state. TikTok itself is a social media that across the world, including China, Hong Kong, all around the world. If there is one piece missing, that means it's not a global social media anymore. If also like US, they also have the ban on these social media technology from China, like TikTok or WeChat. We will see that this is like a technology split that finally we have to choose. Either we have to use, for example, WeChat, or we have to use WhatsApp. If we want to communicate globally with people from China and Hong Kong and US, we may have to find another solution that can work across the world. But politically, it will be getting more difficult.
And the Chinese government has criticised Trump's restrictions on Chinese social media apps, describing the move as political manipulation.
The relevant companies have carried out business operations in the U.S. according to market principles, international rules, and have abided by U.S. laws and regulations. On the pretext of national security, the U.S. frequently abuses its national power and unjustifiably suppresses non-U.S. companies. China is firmly opposed to these acts of naked hegemony. At the expense of the rights and interests of U.S. users and companies, the U.S. is putting its principles and international rules, and is carrying out arbitrary political manipulation and suppression, which will only result in its own moral decline, damage its national image, and lead to a deficit of its international trust. In the end, the U.S. will reap what it has sown.
And the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also stressed that Canada should release Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou and bring bilateral relations back on track.
First of all, I want to make it clear that China is a country under the rule of law, and its judicial organs handle cases independently in strict accordance with the law. The Canadian side is well aware of China's solemn position on the Meng Wanzhou incident. The Meng Wanzhou case is a serious political case. China demands that the Canadian side immediately release Ms. Meng Wanzhou and let her return to China safely.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. An Air India Express plane crashed in the southern Indian state of Kerala on Friday, killing at least 16 and seriously injuring 46. The plane carrying 191 passengers skidded off the runway in rain and broke in two after landing at Calicut Airport. Air India Express authorities have noted that the plane was one of the repatriation flights operated to bring back Indian nationals stranded abroad due to COVID-19 travel restrictions. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended his condolences to the families of the victims on Twitter. Authorities have launched an investigation into the incident. The World Health Organization has confirmed the existence of 6 COVID-19 vaccines in phase 3 of testing. The Executive Director of the WHO Health Emergencies Programme, Dr. Michael Ryan, said development of these prototypes has been rapid, taking into account the time it took to begin studies. Ryan also said that the UN Health Agency will closely follow these medical trials to verify their effectiveness. The aim is to distribute 2 million doses of the vaccine worldwide by the end of 2021. Africa has over 1 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, but global health experts say the true toll is likely to be several times higher due to the lack of testing for the continent's 1.3 billion people. While experts note that infection rates in wealthier nations could be significantly higher than the official numbers, Africa faces the challenge of a large number of undetected cases, posing a threat to many of the world's weakest health systems. Africa has so far reported over 21,000 COVID-19 deaths. The World Health Organization has said the figures represent a pivotal point for the continent as infections in several countries are surging. And due to the health crisis that South Africa is facing in the midst of the pandemic, the World Health Organization has sent experts to Johannesburg to help strengthen the response to the novel coronavirus. Upon arrival, the WHO emergency team was quarantined according to regulations set by the African country. The UN Health Agency pointed out that it is expanding support to countries suffering a significant increase in COVID-19 cases. Senegalese authorities announced the reimposition of COVID-19 restrictions this Friday after recording a steady rise in a number of cases across the country.
Unfortunately, since the lifting of the state of emergency, we have noted a certain laxity among the population and a clear lack of respect for barrier measures, chiefly the wearing of masks and social distances. I would like to inform you that the following measures have been taken with immediate effect: a ban on gatherings at beaches, sports grounds, public spaces and theaters, prohibition of all demonstrations on the public highway, especially in the Dakar region, mandatory wearing of the masks in the services of the administration and the private sector, in shops, in transport, scrupulous respect of the orders of the Ministry of Transport concerning the number of authorized spaces in the public transport. Any violation of these provisions exposes the perpetrator to penal sanctions, which may range from a fine to imprisonment, in accordance with the provisions of the Code of Contraventions.
As people in Ivory Coast celebrated the 60th anniversary of independence this Friday, President Alassane Ouattara confirmed his participation in the presidential elections to be held in October. President Ouattara formally made the announcement on Thursday, noting that he had decided to reconsider his position and to run for another term. Meanwhile, opposition figures have criticised the move, saying it is a violation of the constitution. President Ouattara is expected to stand against Pascal Affi N'Guessan of the Ivorian Popular Front and former President Henri Konan Bédié of the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire African Democratic Rally.
We find this decision unacceptable because we believe that President Ouattara is trying to cling to power. We have decided to take vigorous action on the ground. We are going to use all peaceful and democratic means, marches, sit-ins, in any case, all possible means to oppose this third mandate.
We invite the President of the Republic to ensure that he can safeguard social peace and stability. To do otherwise will be to open up a Pandora's box that will give rise to uncontrollable excess.
An armed attack caused the death of at least 20 people in the northern Nigerian state of Kaduna on Thursday. The attack occurred on Thursday morning when armed men invaded villages and opened fire against residents' homes. Several survivors fled to nearby villages, while dozens of homes were damaged. Meanwhile, local authorities in the government area of Sangun Kataf have accused Fulani militia of being responsible for the violent attack. Irish authorities placed 3 counties into lockdown this Friday following an increase in COVID-19 cases.
This evening, in response to the increased spread of the disease in counties Kildare, Laois and Offaly, and acting on the very clear advice of public health officials, the government has decided to introduce a number of limited restrictions within those 3 counties for a period of 2 weeks from midnight tonight. In these 3 counties, everyone should restrict their movements to within their own county, except for the purposes of work and for other essential journeys.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.